Hello, and welcome to another edition of 10 Tips in 10 Minutes, and I'll be your host, Sid Ragona. Today's topic is myths about being an entrepreneur. There are hundreds of myths, and most of them actually dissuade people from starting their own business. I've picked 10 of my favorites. Let's get started with myth number one. Myth number one: entrepreneurship is for the tech-savvy young. Well, in fact, there are two myths there. One of the myths is you have to be young, and the other myth is you have to be tech-savvy. So let's deal with both of those separately. First of all, when it comes to age, there are no limits on what age you can become an entrepreneur. In fact, studies have shown that successful founders of businesses, the average age is 45. And therefore, that tells me a degree of life experience is often necessary to be a successful entrepreneur. The second thing is tech savvy. I think the truth of the matter here is you don't have to be tech savvy, but your business does have to be tech savvy. You can't run a business today without knowing a whole suite of things such as even how to use a cell phone, email, Facebook, any sort of social media, simply being able to take a photograph and send it to other people. There is a degree of tech savviness that is required. And if you don't have it, you need to find people that do. So I'd say that's gently busted, but does require some thinking and some explanation. Myth number two: there is no such thing as a part-time entrepreneur. I've heard this over and over again as a SCORE mentor, that people want to be an entrepreneur and they don't consider entrepreneurs having sideline businesses. You're not an entrepreneur if you just have a 9-to-5 job and then have a small business on the side. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, statistics have shown that most successful entrepreneurs started out with a part-time gig. In fact, the statistics are that 33% more likely to succeed if you kept your day job in the beginning and got the experience somehow of the venture you're about to launch. This goes back to perhaps what we were saying in the last myth. Experience is key. Therefore, my advice to anybody thinking of entrepreneurship that has a full-time job is don't quit your day job and do start dabbling in your venture. Start learning about it, start getting some experience. This is going to be invaluable and it's going to make you more successful. Busted. Let's go on to myth number three. I hear this a lot, in fact, that I don't have a unique idea. People rack their brains of they need to invent something. Well, you don't. Just think about for a moment. There's not only one type of pizza. There's not only one type of pizza delivery company. There's not only one kind of gym. There's not only one kind of diet. Basically, you don't have to have a unique idea. But what you do have to do is have a need in your area that you can fill. And you do have to come up with the business that caters to that need. So nothing could be further from the truth that you need a totally unique idea. You need to invent something and go get a patent. They just needed to know how to access their customer base. Myth number four: entrepreneurs are born. Well, everybody's born, but you're not necessarily born an entrepreneur with a full set of skills. In fact, all of the skills that are needed to be an entrepreneur can be learned. Being an entrepreneur really is having an idea that fulfills a need that people are willing to pay for. And if you have the idea and maybe you don't have the skills, you can always acquire the skills. And in fact, this is one of the best kept secrets in the world, I think, well, especially in the United States. You can get mentors. You can get a SCORE mentor absolutely free. There are over 10,000 SCORE mentors in the US, all with different abilities. And that essentially is like having a board of directors of 10,000 people, and you can draw on their expertise anytime you want, and it costs you nothing. To be honest, It's plain dumb not to use a mentor. Myth number 5, entrepreneurs are wealthy. Well, you don't have to be wealthy to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I would say that most entrepreneurs do not start out wealthy. However, I think it's very important to actually understand that entrepreneurship is actually a path to wealth. When you think about it, very few people get rich working for somebody else. Entrepreneurship is a good path to wealth, but it's also a path not just to financial wealth, but happiness, confidence, satisfaction, control. In fact, I don't know whether they've done studies, but I wouldn't be surprised whether being an entrepreneur lengthens your life. Myth number 6, entrepreneurs need a business plan before they start. I know I'm going to get pushback on this from some people. Entrepreneurs do not need a business plan before they start. What they need before they start is to do their research. Research comes first. Think about it. How are you going to write a business plan when you haven't done the research? How are you going to write a business plan when you have perhaps no experience in that field? The first thing an entrepreneur has to do is start his research, get to know the language, get to know the people, get to know the customer base. Once you know those types of things, then you have the material that goes into a business plan, if you need a business plan. My recommendation is you start with the business model canvas. On the SCORE web pages, there are lots of presentations on how to use that. But a business plan is one of the things that I think stops most entrepreneurs in their tracks. Trying to write a business plan without the information is deadly, and it's a waste of time. I'm going to stamp busted all over this. Myth number 7. Entrepreneurs are risk takers. Well, sort of busted, I suppose. In fact, successful entrepreneurs actually do the work ahead of time to reduce risk. So I would say that anything you do, any venture you start, sure, there's risk. But the key is doing the research and taking a course of action that reduces risk and generally promotes success. So I'd say this is sort of busted. Myth number 8. Entrepreneurs are motivated by money. Some might be actually, but the vast amount of entrepreneurs that I've mentored have not been motivated necessarily by the money alone. They've been driven by the fact that they have a good idea and they want independence and they want to create something. And while doing that, they're actually taking steps to make sure that they're profitable as well. So I would say that money is not always the case. A certain degree of freedom is, and there is such a thing as financial freedom, of course, not having to worry. But when you take the path of entrepreneurship, having a life with no worry simply goes out of the window. You worry all the time, and you worry about reducing risk and increasing success. So I would do a gentle busted, not totally motivated by money, but it does come into it. Why pursue something and go broke? You need to pursue it in such a way that you can make a profit. Myth number 9. Entrepreneurs need to borrow money. In fact, the vast amount of entrepreneurs I advise don't borrow money at all. They bootstrap. And in fact, this comes back to what we discussed earlier, which is that many entrepreneurs keep their full-time job and start part-time. There are cases where you do need to borrow money to buy premises if you're going to be brick and mortar, to buy a delivery truck if you're delivering things. I get all that. In those cases, you need to borrow money. But when it comes to borrowing money, borrow with caution. Success is never guaranteed, but paying back the loan is. Myth number 10. Being an entrepreneur means going it alone. Well, there's nothing further from the truth. In fact, doing it all by yourself is tantamount to working in your business, not on your business. And when you work in your business, not on your business, you're simply not going to grow. In fact, successful entrepreneurs are never alone. They surround themselves with advisors, and they generally farm out all of the repetitive, mundane tasks. Doing it alone, it's not for successful entrepreneurs. So this one definitely well and truly busted. I hope you enjoyed a quick synopsis of these 10 myths. Sadly, most myths in business generally discourage people, or perhaps even give them false hope. Probably why they're called myths as opposed to good advice. I think that's probably the difference. I hope this was useful. If you want to add some of your own myths that I could do a presentation on or discuss, please let me know. My email is below, just here. That's the right email. And until next time, thank you very much. Go out there, be successful. Bye-bye. Take 15. Let's get started with myth number 1, if just my PowerPoint would actually work, and go to slide number 1. I'm on myth number 1. Actually, I'm not on myth number 1 because I can't get to it. Let's start with slide number 1. In fact, let's start with myths on entrepreneurship, and I can't get the first slide up. And this is very appropriate because myth number 1 is about being tech savvy. You can't be an entrepreneur without it, and I can't get the slide up. What does that tell you? Oh, good heavens. I don't think I've solved it yet. Yes, I have. Let's start with good heavens. Now that I've got the giggles, I don't think I can do this presentation. Yeah, I've got to get my serious face on. In fact, I think I'm about to start crying. I'm laughing so much. Yeah, I suppose this could be a myth. You can't have a good time being an entrepreneur. Well, I'm having a very good time, actually. Blah, 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 blah. Myth number 11. I only have 10.